James Fairbairn. I'm an editor of OpenYourEyesNews.com. I'm also the founder of Perth Fluoride Free. Very first thing, just a general bit of housekeeping, as I'm sure you're all used to by now. Please switch off your mobile phones. That's over the go straight away. And secondly, if we have the time, we will have questions at the end. So please, make a note of them and save them up to the end of the presentation. Now, first of all, a huge thank you to all of you for making the effort to come here today. No doubt, like me, you've had to battle parking inspectors, Saturday shoppers, and of course the small event that's going on next door, which has made everybody's life getting here just a little bit more difficult. Before I introduce our esteemed guest speaker today, I'd just like to say a few words about the path that got us here to this point, and what motivated me to invite Professor Connett to speak to us here today in Perth. Because I passionately believe that the single most important human right of all is access to clean drinking water. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from Perth. However, like many Perth residents, I came from a part of the world, in England, where water fluoridation had taken place for many, many years, completely unquestioned by a docile general public who felt safe in the knowledge that their political leaders were doing their best to combat tooth decay. In fact, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I even gave the subject a second thought. What prompted that second thought was a visit to my home from a good family friend from France, Isabel, and the look on her face when I offered her a glass of tap water to drink. And when I queried this very Gallic look, and that wonderful Gallic shrug of the shoulders, Isabel said to me, and I apologise for the French accent here, "You English are so barbaric. Putting fluoride into your water. In France, we would never countenance such a thing. Why do you not apply leeches to your teeth too? I will only drink bottled water when I'm in your country." Now, naturally, I was a little taken aback by this, and I know French and English have a thing, but a little taken aback by this, until she asked me a very pertinent question. If I suffered from headaches, would you put paracetamol into the water supply to deal with my headaches? No, you would give me paracetamol to deal with my headaches and leave everybody else's water alone. Now, we here in Perth have had water fluoridation for over 40 years. And in that time, there's been remarkably little public or political debate on the subject, despite very significant advances in our medical and scientific understanding of fluoride's numerous adverse health effects. As a former politician myself, it shocks me at the very least that Perth politicians have yet to wake up to financial insanity of taxpayers funding the fluoridating of our swimming pools, our toilets, our showers, our reticulated gardens. 99.9% of the water that you pay to get fluoridated never goes anywhere near you. It goes onto your garden or into your swimming pool and so forth. And that's why we're here today, ladies and gentlemen, because times they are a-changing. And in our knowledge, and as our knowledge and understanding increases, applying a leech to cure a broken leg may have been a medical de rigueur a few hundred years ago, and yet we would never dream of doing so in these more enlightened times. Now, we're incredibly lucky today because there are very few people out there in the world who know more about this subject than our esteemed guest speaker today, Professor Paul Connett. Originally from the south of England, Professor Connett obtained his bachelor's degree from Cambridge University and his PhD in chemistry from Dartmouth College. He joined the faculty at St Lawrence University in New York State in 1983, becoming a full professor in 1998, specialising in environmental chemistry and toxicology, retiring from his full professorship in May 2006. Now, at the urging of his wife Ellen, he began researching the issues of fluoride's toxicity and water fluoridation debate in 1996. Before Professor Connett began reading the literature on fluoride, he accepted the prevailing American perception that people opposed to fluoridation were scientifically ill-informed. After 15 years of reviewing the primary literature, his perception has dramatically changed. Now, over the last 25 years, Professor Connett has received numerous awards and citations for his work, and frequently participates in community discussions on fluoridation and waste incineration. In that time, he has given over 2,500 public presentations in 54 different countries worldwide and written many articles on fluoride, on dioxin and waste management, and co-produced several videos on those topics as well as a result of that research. In 2010 alone, Professor Connett gave presentations on zero waste to the United Nations twice, to the European Parliament and to the UK Parliament. And despite all this touring and speaking, he also manages to fit in being the Executive Director of the Fluoride Action Network, which is campaigning in the USA to fluoridation ended in the USA as well. And he makes his way all the way to the far side of the globe today, to Perth, to launch his book, The Case Against Fluoride, here in Perth today. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Paul Connett. I'm going to put a mood lighting here now.
Well, thank you very much, James, and thank you also to the Alliance for a Clean Environment. It was they who financed my trip here to get me by plane to Australia, and they graciously allowed me to tack on these talks on fluoridation, in addition to the talks I've been giving recently on why it's not a good idea to build incinerators in Western Australia. And on Sunday I go to Adelaide and then to New South Wales and then down to Victoria. More talks on fluoride. And thanks for struggling through the traffic and everything else. You've just been through a metaphor of how difficult it is to grapple with fluoridation. You've had a physical experience. Okay, well that's the book. The Case Against Fluoride, How Hazardous Waste Ended Up in Our Drinking Water and the Bad Science and Powerful Politics to Keep It There. And that's available on Amazon.com. If you don't avail yourself, I think James has some 10% off coupons to use at Borders, and I guess Borders will order the book for you. Now, this morning I should be talking about the fact that fluoridation is a very poor medical practice. I will give you evidence that the benefit of fluoride as far as fighting tooth decay, swallowing fluoride to fight tooth decay, is very weak indeed, and that's a surprise for many, that there's no adequate margin of safety from known health effects. So let's get that straight out right from the word go. There is no question that fluoride is an extremely toxic substance, and it has damaged the lives of literally millions of people in India and China who have far too much of this fluoride in their drinking water. But that's not in question. What is in question and what is argued about is there an adequate margin of safety between the doses which we know are causing harm to millions of people and the doses that we are likely to get in communities with fluoridated water. And I can tell you right now, in Western Australia, people are definitely getting too much fluoride. I mean, I heard last night that some workers in the mining industry drink 10 to 12 litres of water a day. That exceeds even the pathetic standard proposed by the Institute of Medicine of 10 milligrams a day. If they drink 10 or 12 litres of water, they're going to get 10 to 12 milligrams of fluoride each day, and most of that's accumulating in their bones, and over a lifetime, or actually half a lifetime, they will start to get arthritic symptoms that eventually make their bones more brittle. But anyway, the argument is going to come down to whether there's an adequate margin of safety. And finally, I just want to stress that the promotion of fluoridation is so unscientific and incredible. I mean, it just makes me despair, having devoted my life to teaching science at all levels, primary school, secondary school, technical college, and university, and having tried to persuade students what the scientific method is and how important truth and objectivity and looking at the data before you rush to judgment, all those things are just torn up in your face by the very agencies that are supposed to be protecting our health and protecting the environment. It's been a miserable 14 years trying to argue this thing rationally and scientifically. And I said to my wife, when I got that book finally finished, after 14 years of frustration, I said, it's like being constipated for 14 years and someone's allowed you at last to have a visit to the toilet. Well, she said, don't say that, I think your book is a load of, you know what. Anyway, I've said it anyway. She got me into this, so anyway. Fluoridation is a very poor medical practice. It's the only time since 1945 that we've used the public water supply to deliver medicine. So obviously we've made a judgment that this is not a good thing to do. It's not a good thing to use the public water to deliver medicine. As James said, you wouldn't put paracetamol into the water. And why is it such a bad way of delivering medicine? Well, first and foremost, of course, it deprives the individual of a very important basic right, which is the right to informed consent to medicine. So as soon as the community fluoridates its water, whoever's made that decision, the local council or the state government, they are doing to everyone what an individual doctor can do to no one. An individual doctor cannot force you to take medicine. He or she can tell you what it's good for. He or she is obliged to tell you what the side effects are. And when you've heard all that, then you're supposed to make up your own mind. And heaven help that doctor if he or she does not allow that to happen and attempts to force you to take the medicine. Incredibly importantly, the next issue is very important. Once you put fluoride into the water, you cannot control the dose that people will get. Yes, you can control the concentration of the fluoride at the waterworks, but that doesn't mean you can control the dose, because people drink different amounts of water, and people have different sensitivities, but they drink different amounts of water, and they also are getting fluoride from other sources. Ask any pharmacist if there's any drug he can give to the clients and say, oh, this drug you can take any amount that you want. Don't worry about the dose. Take any amount you want. He'd laugh in your face. And the next issue is to a pharmacist. Can you give a drug to everybody? Is there any drug on your shelves that anybody can take? Regardless of how old they are, regardless of how sick they are, regardless of their nutritional status, regardless of any other weaknesses in genetic makeup or what have you. Is there a drug that you can give to everyone? Absolutely not. Is there a drug that a pharmacist could give to you which does not require the doctor that wrote the prescription to check to see if there are any side effects? No. The understanding is when that doctor writes a prescription is that he or she will be making sure that you don't come back with nasty side effects. That's out of the window here. There's no one watching and monitoring side effects. And there's no health agency. There's no health agency in Australia or New Zealand or England or Ireland or the United States or Canada where they practice fluoridation. There's no health agency monitoring for side effects. The assumption is the assumption was made in 1950 that this was safe, and they haven't bothered to check up since. There's been practically no health study conducted in Australia in communities that are fluoridated. No one is watching. Fluoride is a known toxic substance. One of the first opponents, the first group of opponents to fluoridation were biochemists. Biochemists who had used fluoride to poison enzymes, inhibit enzymes in tracking down the metabolic pathways in the body, including James Sumner from Cornell University, who was one of the world's leading enzyme chemists, who got a Nobel Prize for enzyme chemistry. He said, don't put fluoride anywhere near the body. And we now know much more about that. We know that fluoride interferes with hydrogen bonds, and hydrogen bonds are at the center of structure and function in biology. We also know that fluoride interferes with G proteins, which are responsible for taking messages across every membrane in the body, including the brain. It is sheer nonsense to expose the body willingly to this toxic substance. The level used in fluoridation is not small. They like to persuade you that 1 part per million. So, oh, teeny weeny weeny, 1 part per million is 1 cent in $10,000.